Stop scrolling for just a moment, because the next coin you see could be hiding a story far bigger than its 5-cent face value. Imagine finding an ordinary-looking Jefferson nickel in an old jar, pocket drawer or box of forgotten change, and discovering that tiny details most people never notice could make it a serious collectible. Today we are taking a closer look at 3 fascinating United States Jefferson Nickels, the 1994D, the 1996D, and the 2002D. At first glance, they may look almost identical, but collectors know that the real secrets can be hidden in the smallest details. The condition of the coin, the sharpness of the strike, the famous steps of Monticello, and especially genuine mint errors can dramatically change what a coin is worth. But here is the shocking part. Not every old nickel is a fortune, and these dates are not automatically worth millions. The real treasure hunt is finding an exceptionally rare, high-grade, or genuinely unusual example hiding among ordinary coins. So before you spend one of these nickels, look closely, because the difference between 5 cents and a valuable collector coin may be hiding right in front of you, and you could easily overlook it. What if the ordinary 5-cent coin sitting in your pocket right now is not as ordinary as you think? Imagine finding a 1994D Jefferson nickel and almost throwing it into a cash register without realizing that collectors may be interested in the tiny details hidden on its surface. At first glance, this coin looks like millions of other Jefferson Nickels produced in the 1990s, but coin collecting is a world where a tiny difference can completely change the story. The date, the letter D, the condition, the sharpness of the strike, the Monticello steps, and any genuine mint error can all matter. Now let's be clear, a normal 1994D Jefferson nickel is not automatically worth $1 million, and simply finding the date does not make you a millionaire overnight. But that does not mean you should ignore it. The real excitement is finding an exceptional example among ordinary coins. Some high-grade 1994D nickels have sold for hundreds or even more than $1,000, depending on grade and characteristics. So before you spend one, stop for a moment and look closely. Because the question is not simply, is this a 5-cent coin? The real question is, what makes this particular 5-cent coin different? To understand this coin properly, we have to travel back through the history of the Jefferson nickel. The Jefferson nickel first appeared in 1938 and replaced the famous Buffalo nickel. The new design placed Thomas Jefferson on the front and Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. The design was created by sculptor Felix Schlag and became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. By 1994, this design had already been part of American life for more than 5 decades. Millions of people had used Jefferson nickels in stores, vending machines, banks, restaurants, and everyday transactions without giving them a second thought. The 1994D version was produced at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small letter D. The coin weighs about 5 grams, measures about 21.2 millimeters across, and uses the standard copper-nickel composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel. More than 715 million 1994D Jefferson Nickels were produced. That enormous production number is extremely important because it tells us that the coin is not rare simply because it is from 1994. The potential value comes from finding an unusually well-preserved or otherwise exceptional specimen. Now turn the coin over, because this is where one of the biggest clues can be hiding. Look carefully at the picture of Monticello on the reverse. Under the building are the steps leading toward the entrance. To most people, those steps are just tiny lines. To Jefferson nickel collectors, however, they can be one of the most important features on the entire coin. When those steps are sharply struck and clearly defined, the coin may qualify for the famous full steps designation, often written as FS. Why is this important? Because the steps are part of the design that can easily become weak or blurry during striking. A coin can have beautiful surfaces and still fail to qualify as full steps because the strike was not strong enough in that area. But when the steps are exceptionally clear and uninterrupted, the coin can become far more desirable to collectors. The 1994D issue has documented full steps examples, and auction records show that such coins can sell for significantly more than ordinary circulated nickels. This is why anyone searching through old change should not simply check the date and throw the coin back. Turn it over and study Monticello. Those tiny lines may be one of the most important clues on the entire coin. PCGS. Condition is the next major factor, and this is where the difference between a common nickel and a valuable collectible can become dramatic. Think about what happens to a coin after it leaves the mint. It can be thrown into bags with thousands of other coins, transported across the country, dropped into vending machines, carried inside pockets, rubbed against other money, and handled repeatedly. Every one of these experiences can create tiny marks. Collectors, therefore, pay close attention to whether a coin has circulated or remained in mint state condition. A circulated 1994D nickel with obvious wear is generally only worth its face value, while an exceptionally preserved example can command a premium. At the highest grades, the standards become incredibly strict. A few tiny contact marks can prevent a coin from reaching the next grade. The cheek and jaw of Jefferson, the open fields around the portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the Monticello building all deserve careful inspection. A coin that looks perfect to your eyes may still receive a lower, professional grade because graders use magnification and specialized standards. This is why two coins with exactly the same date and mint mark can have completely different values. One might be worth 5 cents, while another exceptional, certified example could be worth hundreds or potentially more depending on its grade and designation. Now let's talk about the possibility that makes coin hunters look twice genuine mint errors. A mint error is not simply damage that happened to the coin after it entered circulation. A real error occurs during the manufacturing process. Problems involving the planche die striking process or positioning can sometimes create unusual coins that collectors find fascinating, depending on the type and severity of the error. A genuine example can be worth substantially more than a normal coin. But this is where you must be extremely careful. A scratch is not automatically a mint error. A dent is not automatically a mint error. A strange color does not automatically mean rarity. Someone could have damaged the coin decades after it left the mint, and that damage can sometimes look dramatic. If you find something unusual on a 1994 D nickel, don't immediately believe a sensational price claim. Instead, examine the feature carefully and compare it with the normal design. Look for evidence that the unusual feature was actually created during striking. Most importantly, never clean, polish, scratch, or alter the coin in an attempt to reveal an error. If the feature appears significant, professional examination is the safest way to determine what you really have. A genuine, authenticated mint error is far more valuable as evidence than a random internet claim that a damaged coin is worth a fortune. So now comes the question everyone wants answered. How much can a 1994 D Jefferson nickel actually be worth? The honest answer is that most examples are not worth huge amounts. A circulated coin will normally remain close to its 5-cent face value. Even many ordinary uncirculated pieces have relatively modest premiums. But the numbers can become much more interesting when the coin reaches exceptional mint state grades, particularly with full steps. PCGS records an auction result of 1,356 for a 1994 D Jefferson Nickel graded MS67, while other public auction records show full steps examples, selling for amounts ranging from tens of dollars to several $100s depending on grade and quality. A documented MS66 full steps example has sold for $192, while other MS66 FS examples have brought different prices at different times. These results demonstrate something extremely important. There is no single price for every 1994 D nickel. The value belongs to the specific coin, not merely the date. Grade strike surfaces, full steps designation, eye appeal certification, and current collector demand can all influence the final selling price. This is also the point where we need to separate the excitement of coin hunting from unrealistic million-dollar promises. A normal 1994 D Jefferson nickel is not a million-dollar coin, and there is no reason to tell viewers that every example can make them a billionaire overnight. More than 715 million were produced, so the date and mint mark alone are not enough to create extraordinary rarity. But the truth is actually more interesting than the exaggerated story. The exciting possibility is that a small number of coins can become valuable because they are dramatically better than the average examples. Think about a coin that survived decades with almost no contact marks, retained its original mint state appearance, and has exceptionally sharp full steps. That coin is different from the millions of ordinary pieces. Collectors are willing to compete for coins that are difficult to find in top condition. This is why searching through old rolls, collections, inherited coin jars, and forgotten change can still be fascinating. You are not guaranteed to discover a fortune, but you may discover something unusual. The goal is not to believe every unbelievable valuation. The goal is to learn what makes a coin genuinely scarce and desirable. If you have a 1994 D Jefferson nickel, there is a simple way to examine it without damaging it. Start with the obverse, the side showing Thomas Jefferson. Check the date and confirm the small d mint mark. Examine Jefferson's cheek, jaw, hair, and the open areas around his portrait for signs of wear or contact marks. Then turn the coin over and focus your attention on Monticello. Use bright light from an angle so the tiny details become easier to see. Look carefully at the steps. Are the lines sharp and complete, or do they appear weak and interrupted? Examine the lettering and the rim as well. Look for unusual raised areas, cracks, missing details, or other features that appear to have been created as part of the original strike. Do not rub the surface with chemicals or metal polish. Do not try to make the coin shine. A coin's original surface is extremely important to collectors, and cleaning can permanently hurt its desirability. If your coin looks unusually sharp, has strong full steps, or appears to contain a genuine mint-made error, then professional authentication and grading may be worth considering. The most valuable coin is not necessarily the brightest one. Sometimes the most valuable coin is the one with the best combination of originality, grade, strike, and rarity. And finally, here is the real secret behind the 1994 D Jefferson nickel. The treasure is not the date alone. The treasure is the possibility that one ordinary-looking coin could be an extraordinary survivor. The Jefferson nickel has been part of American history since 1938, and millions of people have handled these coins without ever studying them. The 1994 D issue represents another chapter in that long history. Produced at the Denver Mint and released into everyday commerce during the 1990s, most examples are common, but exceptional examples can tell a completely different story. If your coin is worn, it may simply be worth 5 cents. If it is unusually clean and uncirculated, it may deserve to be saved. If the Monticello steps are exceptionally sharp, you may have a full steps example that deserves closer attention. And if you discover a genuine mint error, professional evaluation could reveal an even more interesting collectible. So don't throw away your old Jefferson nickels without looking at them. Don't clean them. Don't trust every sensational price claim. Instead, study the date, mint mark, surfaces, strike, and Monticello steps. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary 5-cent coin and a valuable collector's piece is hidden in details so tiny that you could hold the answer in your fingertips without even realizing it. What if I told you that one of the smallest coins in your pocket could be hiding a story far more interesting than its 5-cent face value? Imagine reaching into an old jar of change and finding a Jefferson nickel dated 1996 with a tiny letter D beside the date. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary nickel, something you might spend without thinking twice. But stop for a moment, because the difference between an ordinary 1996 D Jefferson nickel and an exceptional collector grade example can be hidden in details, so small that most people never notice them. This is exactly why coin hunters inspect their change carefully. The 1996 D Jefferson nickel was produced in enormous numbers, so the date alone does not make it rare. But collectors know that condition, strike quality, full steps, and genuine mint errors can completely change the story. And that is where this little 5-cent coin becomes fascinating. You may not have $1 million treasure in your hand, but you could have a coin that deserves a much closer examination before it ever goes back into circulation. So don't look at this coin as just 5 cents. Look at it as a piece of American coin history that may contain a detail almost everyone else missed. To understand why the 1996 D Jefferson nickel exists, we need to go back to the history of the Jefferson nickel itself. The Jefferson nickel entered American coinage in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. The new design placed Thomas Jefferson on the front and Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. The design was created by sculptor Felix Schlag and became one of the most recognizable designs in American pocket change. For generations, these nickels have traveled through stores, banks, vending machines, cash registers, pockets, drawers, and family coin jars. By the time 1996 arrived, the Jefferson nickel had already been part of American daily life for more than half a century. The 1996 D issue was struck at the Denver Mint, which explains the D mint mark. Its standard specifications are also important. It is a 5-cent coin, weighs about 5 grams, measures about 21.2 millimeters across, and is made primarily from copper and nickel rather than silver. More than 817 million 1996 D nickels were struck, which tells us something very important. This is not a rare coin simply because it says 1996 D. The real hunt begins when we start separating the ordinary examples from the exceptional ones. Now turn the coin over and look carefully at Monticello. This building is one of the most important areas on a Jefferson nickel when you are searching for a premium example. At the bottom of Monticello are several horizontal lines representing the building's steps. To the casual eye, these may look like nothing more than tiny details. To a serious collector, however, those lines can be extremely important. When the steps are sharply struck and remain complete and uninterrupted, the coin may qualify for the highly desirable full steps designation, commonly abbreviated as FS. This designation can make an enormous difference compared with an ordinary nickel of the same date and mint. Why are the steps so important? Because the deepest and finest details of the design are often the hardest parts of the coin for the dies to strike clearly. A coin can look brilliant and almost untouched while still having weak or incomplete steps. That is why simply seeing a shiny 1996 D nickel is not enough. You need to inspect the Monticello steps under strong light and, ideally, magnification. If those lines are crisp, separated, and uninterrupted, your coin becomes much more interesting to a collector. Published numismatic records show that full steps examples of the 1996 D can bring substantially higher prices than ordinary pieces. Great collections. Condition is another major factor that can determine whether your 1996 D nickel is ordinary or exceptional. Think about what happens to a coin after it leaves the mint. It may collide with thousands of other coins inside bags and machines. It can be dropped onto hard surfaces, rubbed against other money, carried in pockets exposed to dirt, and handled by countless people. Every one of those experiences can leave tiny marks on the surface. Collectors therefore pay close attention to whether a coin has actually circulated or still retains its original mint state appearance. A coin with obvious wear, scratches, dull surfaces, or heavy contact marks will normally have little collector premium. On the other hand, a coin that looks as though it has barely been handled can be much more desirable. At the highest levels, the difference between grades can come down to incredibly small details. Jefferson's cheek, jaw, hair, Field's lettering, and Monticello all need to be examined. This is why two coins with exactly the same date can have dramatically different values. One might be worth only 5 cents, while another exceptional, certified example could be worth hundreds or even thousands. PCGS records show that the 1996 D regular strike category has a major difference between ordinary examples and the full steps variety, demonstrating how much the designation can matter. But there is another possibility that makes coin hunting even more exciting. Mint errors. A genuine error happens during the manufacturing process, before the coin reaches the public. Sometimes a planche can be improperly prepared, a die can develop a problem, or the striking process can produce an unusual result. Depending on the type and severity of the error, collectors may be willing to pay significant premiums for authenticated examples. But this is where you must be extremely careful. Not every strange-looking nickel is an error. A scratch is not automatically an error. A dent is not automatically an error. Discoloration is not automatically an error. Damage caused after the coin left the mint can sometimes look dramatic, but it usually does not carry the same collector value as a genuine, mint-made error. If you think your 1996 D nickel has something unusual, examine it closely without altering it. Do not polish it, clean it, scratch it, or attempt to repair the strange feature. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors. The safest approach is to compare the feature with known examples and, if it appears significant, have it examined by an experienced numismatist or professional grading service. A real error supported by professional authentication is far more convincing than an internet claim saying that a strange mark is worth a fortune. Now comes the question everyone wants answered. How much could a 1996 D Jefferson nickel actually be worth? The honest answer is that the range is enormous because condition changes everything. A normal circulated 1996 D Nickel is generally worth little more than its 5-cent face value. Even many uncirculated examples remain relatively inexpensive. But when you move into exceptional mint state grades and add the full steps designation, the numbers can rise dramatically. PCGS lists an auction record of 805s for a 1996 D full steps example graded MS 65 in a 2004 Heritage sale, while Great Collections reports a 1996 D MS 67 Plus full steps example that sold for 3,359. Great Collections also reports sales of 1996 D FS coins ranging from very low amounts to several $1,000s depending on grade and quality. These figures show the real lesson. The valuable part is not simply the date, 1996 or the letter D. The valuable part is the combination of rarity, condition, strike quality, certification, and collector demand. This is also where we need to separate reality from the sensational claim that a 1996 D nickel could automatically make someone a millionaire or billionaire overnight. A normal 1996 D Jefferson nickel does not have $1 million value. With more than 817 million pieces produced, the date is far too common for that claim to be realistic by itself. But that does not make the coin boring. In fact, the opposite is true. The exciting part is that an ordinary-looking coin can sometimes contain an extraordinary characteristic. Think about the possibilities. A spectacularly preserved specimen, an exceptionally sharp strike with full steps, or a genuine and significant mint error can make a coin stand apart from the millions of ordinary examples. The coin collecting world is built around these differences. Collectors are not simply asking, "What year is this?" They are asking, "How was this particular coin made? How well did it survive? And what makes it different from the others?" That is the question that can turn a simple 5-cent piece into a serious collectible. So instead of promising viewers impossible overnight riches, the better message is this: never assume a coin is worthless until you have examined the details that collectors actually care about. If you have a 1996 D Jefferson nickel in your possession, there is a simple examination you can perform without damaging the coin. Start with the front. Look at Jefferson's portrait, especially the cheek and jaw area, because these areas can reveal contact marks and signs of circulation. Check the fields around the portrait for scratches, spots, or unusual raised features. Then inspect the date and the D mint mark carefully. After that, turn the coin over and focus on Monticello. This is where you should spend the most time. Use bright angled lighting and, if available, a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look directly at the steps. Are the horizontal lines clear? Do they remain separated across the design? Are there interruptions or flat areas? If the steps look exceptionally sharp, do not clean the coin in an attempt to make them brighter. Cleaning can permanently change the surface and may reduce its desirability. Also examine the lettering rim and other design elements for genuine mint-made abnormalities. The goal is not to convince yourself that every unusual mark is valuable. The goal is to determine whether your coin is genuinely different from a normal 1996 D nickel, you suggests. This is the 2002 D Jefferson Nickel, a United States 5-cent coin struck at the Denver Mint. And before you rush to spend one, take a closer look, because collectors do not judge a coin only by its date. They look at the mint mark, the strike, the condition, the tiny details on Monticello, and especially unusual mint-made errors. Now let me make one thing clear from the beginning. A normal 2002 D nickel is not automatically worth millions of dollars, and claims that every example can make you a millionaire or billionaire are simply unrealistic. The real excitement comes from discovering an extraordinary specimen hidden among ordinary coins. So if you have a 2002 D nickel, don't throw it away or assume it is worthless before examining it carefully. This little coin has a story, and in the world of coin collecting, sometimes the smallest details can make the biggest difference. The story of the Jefferson Nickel goes back to 1938, when the United States introduced a new 5-cent design featuring Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. The design was created by sculptor Felix Schlag and became one of the longest-running designs in American coinage. By 2002, the Jefferson Nickel had already been circulating for more than 6 decades, passing through countless hands, cash registers, vending machines, pockets, jars, and coin collections. The 2002 D version was produced at the Denver Mint, which is why you can see the small letter D on the coin. This particular issue was made from the standard modern nickel composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a diameter of about 21.2 millimeters and a weight of about 5 grams. More than 691 million 2002 D nickels were produced, so the date itself is not rare. But rarity in coin collecting is not always about how old a coin is or how many were made. Sometimes it is about how few survived in exceptional condition or how unusual a particular error is. Now turn your attention to the reverse of the coin. This is where one of the most important clues for a valuable Jefferson nickel can appear. You will see Monticello in the center, with the words Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America. Under the building are the steps leading toward the entrance. These steps are extremely important to Jefferson nickel collectors. When the steps are sharply and completely defined, collectors may describe the coin as having full steps, often abbreviated as FS. Why does that matter? Because many nickels, even coins that look beautiful at first glance, have weakness in the strike around Monticello. The fine lines of the steps can disappear or become blurry during production. A coin with exceptionally sharp, uninterrupted steps can therefore attract serious collector interest, particularly when combined with a very high mint state grade. This is one reason you should never judge a 2002 D nickel simply by looking at its shine. A shiny coin is not necessarily a valuable coin. What matters is the quality of the strike, preservation, surfaces, and tiny details. Condition is another major part of the story. Coin collectors use grading systems to describe how well a coin has survived. A circulated 2002 D nickel may have scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, worn details, or discoloration, because it has spent years moving through everyday commerce. Such a coin will generally remain close to its 5-cent face value, but an uncirculated example can be dramatically different. If a coin was preserved soon after leaving the mint and avoided heavy contact with other coins, it can retain much more of its original appearance. As the grade rises, the standards become increasingly strict. At the very highest levels, even a tiny mark can separate one grade from another. That is where the market can change quickly. For example, published price information shows ordinary 2002 D nickels in modest uncirculated grades at relatively low values, while full-step specimens in very high grades can command much more. One important reason is simple. Collectors are not just buying a 5-cent piece. They are competing for a particularly scarce example of that date and mint combination, numista. But here is where the real treasure hunt begins. Errors. A genuine mint error can transform an ordinary-looking, modern coin into a fascinating collectible. Errors can happen when something goes wrong during the manufacturing process, such as problems involving the die, planche, striking pressure, or positioning of the coin. You might hear collectors discuss off-center strikes, die breaks, cuts, broad strikes, or other unusual abnormalities. However, there is a huge difference between a real mint error and damage that happened after the coin left the mint. A scratch caused by a machine, a dent caused by another coin, heat damage, chemical discoloration, or someone intentionally altering the coin does not automatically make it rare. The strongest discoveries are abnormalities that can be explained by the minting process and show characteristics consistent with a genuine production error. That is why you should never assume that every strange-looking mark means thousands or millions of dollars. The more unusual the feature appears, the more important proper authentication becomes. One particularly interesting area to inspect on a 2002 D Jefferson nickel is the area around Monticello and the lettering. Look closely under good lighting and, if possible, use magnification rather than relying only on your eyes. Examine the steps beneath Monticello and ask yourself whether the lines are sharp, complete, and uninterrupted. Then examine the date and the D mint mark. Look for unusual doubling, raised metal, missing design elements, cracks, or other features that appear to be part of the original strike rather than damage. Also inspect the edge of the coin and compare the overall shape with a normal nickel. The key is comparison. A genuine error usually has a logical relationship to the way the coin was struck. Random scratches and dents usually look completely different under magnification. And remember, do not clean the coin while searching for value. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and potentially reduce collector interest. If you think you have discovered something unusual, preserve the coin exactly as you found it. So how much can a 2002D Jefferson nickel actually be worth? This is where we need to separate the exciting possibilities from the reality. A normal circulated example is generally worth around its 5-cent face value. Ordinary uncirculated examples can bring more, depending on condition and market demand. High-grade full steps examples are a completely different category. PCGS records an auction result of $1,187 for a 2002D Jefferson Nickel graded MS67 with full steps, sold in January 2023. Other published price guides also show that full steps examples can be substantially more valuable than ordinary examples. This does not mean every 2002D nickel is worth $1,187, and it certainly does not mean your coin is automatically worth that amount. Auction records represent specific coins with specific grades and characteristics. Your coin must actually match the necessary condition and designation before such a comparison becomes meaningful. In other words, the dream is possible at the collector level, but the coin has to earn that price through rarity and quality. Now let's talk about the million-dollar idea that makes videos about coins so exciting. A 5-cent coin worth $1 million would be an extraordinary event. Not the normal situation for a 2002D Jefferson nickel. There is no responsible reason to tell viewers that every 2002D nickel can make them a billionaire overnight. Instead, the real hook is much more believable. You could have a coin worth far more than 5 cents if it contains a genuinely rare characteristic. The difference may come down to details that are almost invisible without magnification. Imagine having hundreds of nickels that look identical, but one has an unusual mint error or an exceptionally strong strike that collectors desperately want. That is what makes coin hunting exciting. You are not looking for guaranteed riches. You are looking for the one unusual specimen that breaks the normal pattern. And because the 2002D issue had such a large production run, the ordinary examples are common, while the exceptional examples are the ones worth investigating. PCGS. Finally, if you have the exact 2002D nickel shown in your collection, don't make a decision based on the date alone. Start by checking whether it has obvious circulation wear. Then inspect the reverse under strong light, especially the Monticello steps. Check the D mint mark, the lettering, the rim, and the surfaces for genuine mint-made abnormalities. If the coin appears unusually well preserved or seems to have a major error, the next step should be professional evaluation rather than an impulsive sale. A reputable grading service or experienced numismatist can determine whether the coin has the characteristics needed for a premium value. The most important lesson is this: the 2002D Jefferson Nickel is not a magic million-dollar coin, but it is a coin worth examining because exceptional examples can be significantly more valuable than face value. So before you spend that little 5-cent piece, turn it over, study Monticello, inspect those steps, examine the surfaces, and ask yourself one question. Is this just another 2002D nickel? Or could it be one of the unusual examples that collectors have been searching for? Sometimes the biggest discoveries begin with a coin that everyone else overlooked.